oftentimes what you'll see is a seller who is interested in wanting to include a reverse contingency. Once that contingency is lifted, will also
Mm-hmm.
probably will lift it in favor of having an occupancy of a set amount of time. So definitely a symbiotic relationship between the two of them, but also some clear differences.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is the Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. All right, welcome back to the Closing Table. My name is Kevin McIntosh, your host, and joining us on this very productive episode, we will be speaking with Mr. John Drallos. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic, man. Yeah, we're here to talk business. But before we do that, let's have a little bit of fun. Quick game, icebreaker called This or That. Couple words for you related to real estate. I just want you to choose one. And if you want to, you can give us an explanation. All right? All right. First one, buyer or seller?
I very much enjoy, I work with anybody, but given a choice between the two, very much would enjoy and prefer working on the seller side of the equation.
Hmm, okay, interesting. City or suburbs?
Oh, seeing as how most of my, where I live and most of my business is out in the burbs, then go with what you know.
Hmm, okay, okay. Fixed rate or adjustable rate?
I'm a pretty simple guy, and so keep it fixed. Let me know. This is for me personally, and let me know what it is and what it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be for the next 15 or 30 years. And I guess there's a safety and a security in that, and so that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay. Another one, pre-approval or pre-qualification?
Oh, 100% pre-approval. So start that process. Make sure
Mm,
that everything is actually good to go. Pre-qual. I don't know. It's in my opinion, is about worth the paper that it's printed on. Maybe even not even that.
oh, okay. Last one, appraisal or assessment? I think I know the answer to this.
Yeah, we're going appraisal.
Yeah, that was right. I probably answered that myself. All right, cool, man. Great way to start things off. A fun
Yeah.
way, John. So let's take a moment to introduce you, man. We already know you're a real estate agent, but in 60 seconds or less, can you explain to us who is John outside of real estate?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, at the core, I'm a family man. I've got two daughters. One is a teenager who has absolutely mastered the art of the eye roll, and she's already convinced that I don't know anything. But maybe someday she'll circle back around and realize that maybe I know what I'm talking about, at least a little bit. And then I
All
also
right.
have I also have an almost 10-year-old daughter. So absolutely love being a dad of girls, having daughters, unbelievable. Obviously, husband to my wife. And then, in addition, I'm also dual career, and I love working real estate, and I get in the
Mm,
hustle. I'm in it full time, but I also am a high school history teacher, and so
oh,
that's obviously an
nice.
important part of what I do as well. And very much looking forward to obviously the coming summer. That has a whole different meaning for me.
Yeah. All right, good. That's a great explanation, man. Give us a little bit into who you are some more, John. So let's talk real estate.
Mhm.
More specifically, some terms and some new things that I've done research on that I just knew nothing about. So I want you to clarify for me and our audience.
Yeah.
First thing I saw was talking about umbrella insurance. Now I've heard of homeowners insurance and different types of insurance, but what is umbrella insurance? Why and when is it necessary? If you can talk about that briefly.
Yeah, so typically your umbrella policies, and let me just preface this by saying that that again, I surround myself with great referral partners, and I'm a big believer in everybody kind of swims in their own lane. And so when it comes to obviously the insurance and the homeowners policies that that are required, I'm very much you know kind of send things over to to my resident experts on that. And but with respect to an umbrella policy, The specifics are generally, and these are just general guidelines, not specifics, but generally about a quarter to a half million in liability coverage. If you need something beyond that, then it's a good idea to have that umbrella policy. And but also if your personal net worth is kind of exceeds your liability coverage, and so the umbrella policy will come into play in that circumstance as well.
Oh, okay. Got you. Got you. Great information right there
Mhm.
in regards to that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talking about this use and occupancy clause that I saw also. What is this use and occupancy clause and who does it benefit necessarily?
Okay, so use and occupancy. Frankly, there's times where it can benefit both buyers and sellers, right? And so just uh, three
Hmm.
quick reasons why it can benefit the buyer. One is that you can make your offer more attractive and stand out if you can be flexible with occupancy. And so, real quick definition of that would be: so you present your offer, and that offer, let's just say Garden Variety is going to go to closing within 30 days. And so occupancy is then after closing, allowing the seller to stay at the property for an agreed upon amount of time. Again, Garden Variety is going to be about 30 days. And so, as a buyer, you can make your offer more attractive in this market by being flexible with occupancy, and not telling the seller that, hey, I'm going to need the keys on day one, and so, hey, sorry, you need to get
Right.
out. So that is one way, and actually we can. There's actually some interesting ways that we can write up in those offers too, to offer things like free occupancy, perhaps, and there's some other things we can do there. Two is, since as a buyer you've closed on the property, technically the property is yours. And
Right.
if we've negotiated an occupancy per diem amount, an amount that the sellers are going to pay in order to continue to live there for a set amount of time, then they're
Right.
actually paying your mortgage for that amount of time. I mean, your first mortgage
Mm,
payment's not due for 45 days, typically after closing anyway. But depending on what is negotiated,
really?
hey, you can get a good portion of your mortgage covered by the sellers at that time. Now it's distributed afterwards by the title companies as part of an escrow holding, but certainly you can use that money for that purpose. All right, and then
Mm,
also, actually, two reasons that are beneficial for the sellers. Take the stress. It takes some of the stress out of having to be packed up and closing and moving, and things are happening fast, right? Because usually a seller also
right.
becomes a buyer at the other end, and so as to be able to avoid this idea of, okay, I'm closing on this day on the house that I'm selling, and okay, let's pack the truck and let's go to the new house that I'm buying, and we've got to be out on the same day. Well, having an occupancy agreement in there
Mm,
enables that seller to have the peace of mind that says, you know what, I've got 10, 15, 20, 30 days, whatever is agreed upon, to get my stuff out and to fully move out and be able, it's a stressful time anyway. And to be able to do so in a way that is a more deliberate pace, versus this whirlwind of getting out on closing day. And um, and then also
mm,
and then also the other part that's just beneficial, frankly, to both parties, is that there's built-in mechanisms to figure out how disputes would be handled. So usually, as part of that use and
mm.
occupancy agreement, there will also be included there a damage deposit, so that if the sellers are
Oh,
staying or
wow.
using occupancy and all of a sudden there's a hole in the wall, well, there's already a built-in mechanism for how that's going to be resolved financially between the two parties, versus having to go to a small claims court and says you did this, and no, 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 it was like that before, and being able to avoid it altogether. So there's that component to it as
Right,
well.
right.
Yeah.
To me, that kind of sounds like, and you please step in and correct me if I'm wrong. That kind of sounds like a reverse contingency. Now correct me if I'm wrong, please, but isn't that essentially like a reverse contingency is something that would kind of help out a seller in a case that they can't get a home immediately, and that kind of like, hey, I want to stay here until this happens. This happens if this happens type thing. Is it
Mm.
kind of the same thing as a reverse contingency?
I mean, similar. I mean, certainly, certainly there's a relationship between the two of them. The main difference would be that in a reverse contingency, which is more and more common now with inventories being so low, that some sellers are nervous about putting their house on the market because, again, like I said before, a seller is probably going to become a buyer. And if they're fearful, I'm not going to find a place, well, that reverse contingency then gets included into a purchase agreement that basically says, okay, Mr. or Mrs. whomever seller is not going to close on this property until they find their next one. Now, to get back to your question regarding how does that relate to occupancy, is ways to protect the seller and to sort of encourage them to, if they are interested in selling, to go ahead and list and sell. Is one is that reverse contingency, but the other is making sure that there is occupancy on the other side. So oftentimes what you'll see is a seller who is interested in wanting to include a reverse contingency. Once that contingency is lifted, will also probably
Mm-hmm.
will lift it in favor of having an occupancy of a set amount of time. So definitely a symbiotic relationship between the two of them,
Right.
but also some clear differences.
So, I mean, do you have any other examples of what reverse contingencies could be besides that one?
I mean, that's the one we run across most frequently, and that's the one that I have used
Okay.
with my sellers most frequently. Is that reverse contingency in
Okay.
looking, being able to secure your next home, and so that is
Gotcha.
in my experience the most frequently used method of that reverse contingency, and one that I have used most with my clients.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Thank you
Mhm.
for clarifying that.
Yep.
You also have experience in listing luxury homes, correct?
Well, I mean, hey, I think we'd all like a little bit more of that, but 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 absolutely, but absolutely. So
Yes.
yeah.
All right. So with that being said, I'm interested to see during times of economic uncertainty,
Mhm.
how does your approach to selling luxury homes change, if it does at all?
Yeah, well, I think the important thing to remember, Kevin, is that whether you're talking about a $50,000 property or a $50 million property, our job is to highlight the value of the property because all properties are going to have some value. Now, some are going to have significant limitations as well. And so, the key part in all of that, and obviously it's difficult in dealing in the luxury market if there's economic uncertainty or even a recession. But and so I would say first and foremost, what is it about that property that is the most appealing, and that is what needs to be highlighted. Now, obviously, in Southeast Michigan, usually in that luxury market, or I shouldn't say usually, but very frequently in that luxury market, that also coincides with lakefront, right? And so obviously, we would very much highlight the value add of that property, and um, and so, and then the other piece about it too, just in terms of the conversations that you have with the sellers, I'm a big believer that that you don't overpromise and underdeliver. You have to be very clear in what the realities of the
Okay.
market are, and versus, oh yeah, I can get this listing sold in 5 days or whatever. You have to let them know, okay, here's kind of average days on market. Here is again, going back to my economics background, uh, very much kind of drives the conversations that I have with my clients. And so you've got to be very clear with them in terms of the expectations of average days on market, and then also lay out here is the competition that you
Right.
have in this market and how many days on market that house has actually been. And so then the conversation is, okay, do you want to be more aggressive than your competition in going after the fewer buyers that are out there? Okay, which is again, you're hiring me to, to sell your house and also protect your investment. And so hopefully we are able to arrive at a situation in which both of those are being honored and supported. And then the other couple of pieces of it is, coincides again with any price point, is, selling property is not always is not just, okay, put a sign in the front yard, throw it on the MLS, and there you go. It is about maintaining relationships. And so and what I mean by that is making sure that you are constantly in contact with your network. You have obviously your social network, but also your interpersonal network, because and being able to talk about it, and being able to let folks know that, hey, there is an amazing property that's available. Would you like to take a look at it, or do you know anybody that is interested? And so it's kind of the old-fashioned working the phones mentality, right? And so if there's not as many buyers that are prevalent in a given area, well, then you have to try to expand that area a little bit. And how do you expand the area? Well, by contacting your oh, I lost the word. What is it that I'm looking for? Your network. You're contacting your network, and
Oh, okay.
and so that's the way there. And then the other thing, that I also am a big believer in is, of course, it goes with that. It's kind of the understatement of the past several years. Oh, COVID changed things. Yeah, COVID changed things. But one thing that it changed, obviously, is
Right.
is there's no longer as much of a need to live super close where you work. And Michigan,
Oh, right,
particularly
right.
Southeast Michigan, presents a lot of opportunities, from a property standpoint, an affordability standpoint, even in the luxury market, that perhaps folks coming from other parts of the country don't necessarily realize or understand, right? And so, particularly, I'm talking about like the coastal areas, and how high. That's a tongue twister. How high priced it is, particularly on the coasts.
Right.
And so, all right,
Hmm.
well, if you don't have to live close to work, and you're selling on one of the coasts, and you have an opportunity to live in Michigan and get into the luxury space, for the same amount that you were living in a quite a small place in before. Well, hey, there's an opportunity there. Now, I'm not saying that's the primary route, but it's just another route to market in the luxury division.
Great point. Yeah, Michigan being one of those places. See, I'm actually familiar with the South Haven area, South Haven,
Yeah.
Michigan, and those beach homes in that setting, especially during the summer, that's great luxury. That's the type of stuff that I think of when I think of luxury. And then, I mean, for you to pretty much make that connection, yeah, especially being in Michigan, luxury is usually tied to homes right off the water
Hmm.
and things of that nature. We have so much of it here also. So I could actually see that. I can see that. I can see that. That's great information. Appreciate that.
Hmm.
One thing I know a lot of buyers or investors for that part try to find is that diamond in the rough, right? That gold in the dirt. They try to find that good house that either may be overlooked or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
As a real estate agent, how are you identifying these up and coming neighborhoods as a whole, not just one house, but the whole neighborhood?
Yeah.
How are you identifying these as good investment properties?
Yeah, and that's what everyone's looking for, right? Is like the next one. And that starts,
Right.
10, 15 years ago, where everybody was getting into the Royal Oak market, and then it was the Berkeley market, and then it was the Clawson market.
Hmm.
And so everyone's looking for that next one. Well, a couple things that I look for, in trying to identify those that next one, is, it's going to go against a little bit what I said earlier, right? In terms of what what business or industry is perhaps locating in that area. And so um, and so I'm going to be quite
Hmm.
honest with you. One that I kind of I not kind of one that I identified about a year and a half ago was the Hazel Park area. as like kind of a next up and coming area. And why did I kind of identify that area was, well, when the racetrack closed down. Okay, the racetrack closed down, and then in replace instead of the racetrack, there was new industry moving in, and that industry moving in, and I think we can probably name it. We probably know by name. It's a place where you buy everything and they ship it to you. You can probably guess which one it is. Um, and that was going to lead to the creation of several hundred, if not 1,500 jobs, right? And so, okay, well, if there's an influx of people moving in, then that's naturally going to drive up home prices. And so, so those are types of things. Again, looking at things economically, that's what I try to look at: is where are things moving, where there's already homes that are well-established homes that are in close proximity still to the things that the next generation of home buyers, because usually in those areas you're talking about the millennial generation, not always, but quite frequently, and so in close proximity to the things that the buyers looking for that next one are looking for. And so those are a couple of ideas.
Okay, it makes sense though. Where there's big business, there's usually jobs, and where there's jobs, there's people. Where there's people, they have to live. So it definitely makes sense. But I mean, ultimately, you have to do your research on what businesses are coming there for the most part. So
yes,
great professional perspective. John, this is something that you mentioned on your social media profile, and I need you to take some time to break this down. Confirmation bias. You said this is a pandemic. Confirmation bias is a pandemic. What? Let's start off by explaining what confirmation bias is.
All right. So, all right, you hit a chord. So, confirmation bias, very simple, is I want to believe something is true, therefore I will only believe that is true. And so, I mentioned before that, I dual career. And so, and so like in a classroom, it might be where I teach history, it might be, well, I want to believe that this aspect of history is what took place. So I'm only going to believe that regardless of what the research tells me. In the world of real estate, in the world of real estate, it could be a situation in which you are speaking with a buyer or a seller, and they want to believe that a home is or is not worth a certain price. And then it's a very interesting and it's a challenging situation, because even when you are presenting the facts to them, it's okay, this is what it is actually worth. Here's what homes are selling for. And there might be resistance there because, well, wait, I don't want to believe that's true. Well, I understand that, right? I understand that you want to believe that, that your house that's worth maybe 350,000 is worth 425. I'd want that. But just because we want it doesn't mean it's actually so, right? And so that's sometimes a difficult conversation to have, trying to get through that confirmation bias, because ultimately somebody is hiring me to sell their house, not put a sign out in the front yard and then listen for the crickets chirping. So, so it's so that's where that can come into play. And naturally I handle it with a deal of tact and making sure that I'm not being disrespectful or the equivalent of calling their kid ugly. I would never do that. But again, you just have to. And I think people ultimately, the best way to fight through that confirmation bias is to make sure that it's very clear that you are looking out for their best interest. That, do you want to sell this home? Yes. Okay. Then if we're going to sell this home, this is what it's going to sell for. This is the optimal place in order to market this property so that it will sell. And make it clear that you are working on their behalf, because we are fiduciaries, and so we have to act in our client's best interest. And so that's the best way to, in my opinion, to break through that. But yeah, love the topic of confirmation bias.
Man. For sure, man. When I saw you even mention this, I was like, "Yo, this goes way beyond real estate. Like, this is literally the age that we're in right now. We're in the age of information, right? So people have access to information of all kinds, supporting any and all kinds of ideas, concepts, etc. So, yeah, nowadays you can literally have people literally skewing towards the information that confirms their beliefs that may or may not be a fact.
Yeah.
That may or may not be a fact. So to even this, like I said, this applies across all parts of life. So obviously it would apply to something like real estate, a seller being, blind about what their selling price should actually be, and
Mhm.
going towards information that confirms that, a buyer doing the same thing. So I could see that happening on both ends. And for you to even mention that and bring that up, man, I was like, that's a key right there. That's a major key.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can
Hey,
just kind of
hey,
add to it.
John, before we
Yeah.
get out of here,
Yeah.
oh, please do. Please do.
Oh, no, 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 no. That was a good button to put on it. We're good. So whatever you need next.
Okay. No. I just want to pretty much get into what actually inspired you or motivated you to kind of pivot in your life, if that makes sense. Like my question is, what book, movie, quote, or philosophy or any other content basically helped motivate or inspire you for the better?
Yeah. So, to be honest, I've always been very much a self-motivated person. Like it doesn't take a whole lot. Um, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I hit the gym by 5, and then my professional day starts shortly thereafter, and I'm as consistent as the tides with it. So I am self-driven in that sense, and it kind of drives my wife nuts sometimes. She's like, "Can't you just ever take a day off from working out or from doing all these things?" And like, well, yeah, maybe sometime. So self motivation is something I have been blessed with. Um, but when it comes to what inspires me, and that is the idea of the importance of being relational. And I love Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all of that. And Gandalf,
Hmm.
one of the characters in the series, makes a quote in The Hobbit and against towards this conversation that he's having, and he basically says that Saruman believes it is only great power that can hold evil in check, but that's not what I have found. I have found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folks that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love. That's what drives me, right?
Mm.
And so just the simple acts of kindness and love and
Mm.
being relational, and kind of even circling back to the whole confirmation bias thing and how divisive that can be. Well, how do we come together? Like I'm driven by how do we bring people together? How can we illustrate our love for one another? Simple acts, right? Simple acts of kindness and love. In the world of real
Right.
estate, that could be making abundantly clear of what client-centered relationship happens to be, and providing the value adds of surrounding myself with other quality and professional people that are integral in a transaction, but just in interpersonal reactions, right? And so that means, okay, how I treat my daughters, how I treat my neighbors, right? Just simple acts of kindness and love, because relationships
Yeah.
are ultimately what's at the core of things.
Man, that was, you spoke on it right there. Pennies add up. Those small little efforts daily, every day, or at least frequently every day, is going to amount to something. It's going to amount. I always tell people 10 years from now, you're going to wish you started 10 years ago. Even a year from now, you're going to wish you started a year ago. So putting in that small effort
Yeah.
frequently definitely makes the difference, man. We appreciate you for sharing that with us here, John. And before we get out of here, if you have any last words and or want to tell the people how they can reach out to you, please do so now.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is John Drallos. I'm with Oakenstone Realtors, and you can reach out to me anytime through my socials. Obviously, you can find me on Facebook, my Insta, and I'm starting to get into the TikTok space a little bit as well. And so you just find my name, search my name through all three of those, and
Hey.
you'll be able to find me. And or you can call anytime, 248-884-8865. And while North Oakland County is kind of my base, I'm all over the place. So I'm happy to help anywhere in Southeast Michigan and beyond.
There it is. Perfectly said, man. Thank you again, John, for taking time to be here on the closing table. We appreciate that. And for our audience watching on YouTube right now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, now's your time to actually hit that like button. Please and thank you. Make sure you also share the content and subscribe to our channel. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platforms, please do the same. That means give us a like, a 5-star rating, and also subscribe for our latest content. Hey, John, before we get out of here, I'd like to leave our audience with a question to get them thinking. How do you approach researching and comparing different properties in a market where there are so many options to choose from? I want you to think about that and then share them in the comments below. Besides that, we'll talk to you soon.